Apple M1 Macs allow you to play some of your favourite iPhone and iPad games directly from the App Store. So today I'm testing 30 games and going over the pros and cons of each one, I suppose. You have two ways to find iOS games on the M1 App Store. Either directly search for a game and choose iPhone and iPad apps and see if it's available to download, or click on your profile and under iPhone and iPad apps, you can see a list of your purchased apps and games compatible with M1. Not every game is available. It's up to developers to opt into the program. Anyway, let's take a look at our first game, which is Sky Children of the Light. In late 2020, Apple updated M1, allowing users to make iPhone and iPad games full screen. Yes! Like the majority of games on the App Store, most have been designed for iPad in mind. Most will not have keyboard support, and right now, none have mouse support. The majority of games do, however, have controller support, so therefore they are more playable on Mac if you play via this method. Sky Children of the Light has controller support and is fantastic with one. The game also allows you to change the graphic presets. In this instance, I'm playing at high performance mode, which allows you to enjoy 60 frames per second. This open world adventure game is actually coming to Mac natively in the future. It was supposed to come out at the same time as the iOS version in 2019, but was delayed. It was then meant to come out in 2020, but was delayed again, and now it's coming out in 2021. I was actually invited to the Mac beta version, which I played a while ago on my 5K iMac, and it was awesome. It was fantastic. So I'm really excited for this native version to come whenever it does. Here we have Super Glitch Dash, which is an arcade runner of sorts, I guess. The cool thing about this game is that it has full controller support, and it also has keyboard support, which works for menu interaction and gameplay. However, the keyboard support is kind of a little bit messy at times. You see, sometimes when you're moving around in game it works, and then sometimes when you want to go left or right, it doesn't actually register, and then that causes you to die. You can also play the game at an ultra quality preset and change the frame rate up to 120. Slay the Spire is a fantastic card game. I've already played the game a lot on my iPad, and I actually just play it with my mouse on the iPad version. However, it doesn't have official mouse support. I'm just using Apple's on-screen cursor. However, on Mac, I'm just using my mouse, and it works really well. It's just like playing the native Mac Steam version of Slay the Spire. Instead, the aspect ratio is 4:3, not 16:9. Sometimes when you're moving cards, it's a little bit finicky and it doesn't register as well, but it's very minor. So many of you wanted to see Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, and I can see why. It's such a good game and I've been playing it for ages. In fact, it used to have a native Mac version, which was available on the Mac App Store. However, it was removed due to being 32-bit. This also applies to GTA 3 and GTA Vice City. So now, instead, you will have to play the iPad version on your M1 Mac. It does have controller support, so if you want to play, definitely play it that way. Do not play with your mouse because it will not work well. It will be super awkward. If you are interested in all the GTA games, you can get GTA Vice City and GTA 3. You can also get Bully if you want to get that game too. Neverwinter Nights Enhanced Edition is a fantastic RPG. Because this is the enhanced version, it comes with significantly improved graphics over the original version. We've got all the graphics set to their max preset, and the resolution has defaulted to 1024 by 768. This game works perfectly fine with just your mouse. There is no need again for a keyboard or controller. Endless Nightmare is a horror game The weird thing though is that it actually has partial keyboard support, meaning you can move around with WASD keys. But it has no mouse support, so it's really awkward. You can use your mouse to kind of pan the camera around, but it's not actually, it's not official support. I also discovered that with my PS4 controller, I could move around with the L3 stick, but I could not move the camera with the R3 stick. Iron Blade is a action RPG of sorts with auto battle gameplay. Honestly, I don't know why Gameloft allowed this game to be playable on Mac, because it's super awkward to play as it has no controller support, no keyboard support, and no official mouse support. So when you're playing with your mouse, you'll be clicking all these on-screen buttons and it just doesn't work. Don't download the game, but I just thought I would put it in to make you aware of it. Rush Rally 3 doesn't have the most advanced graphics, but what it does have is fantastic racing gameplay that really is on par with the console experience. The game doesn't have keyboard support, but it does have controller support. You can also change the graphics preset. We've got everything at their max settings, and the resolution is running at 768p. The game also supports 60 FPS. Bright Memory Mobile is a demo of the full game, which hasn't actually been released yet. We are playing at the highest graphics possible with a render resolution of 100. The game has controller support, which is really good because if it didn't, it would be unplayable as it doesn't have keyboard and mouse support. The game only lasts for about 20 minutes, but it's pretty fun and offers some really good first-person action, so definitely give it a go. Assoluto Racing is graphically on par with, I would say, a 7th gen console game, PS3 or Xbox 360. Like Rush Rally 3, it has controller support, however, you have to enable it from the settings, and it only works in-game, it doesn't work for menu interaction. We're playing at the max graphical preset, and you can raise the resolution up to 1080p, which doesn't really make sense. The game also supports 60 FPS if you enable it from settings. I've always loved the Space Marshals series. They're goofy fun, but also provide quality action shooting gameplay. Space Marshals 3 improves on the previous games with vastly improved graphics and a bigger emphasis on stealth. The iPad version here doesn't have keyboard or mouse support, which is a shame because it would be fantastic with one. But it does have controller support, thankfully. You can also change the graphics preset up to high and the resolution up to 100%. Fire Lone Sails is a post-apocalyptic adventure game, and I finished it I think about 3 times. It's so darn good. The game actually has partial keyboard support. It doesn't work for menu interaction, it only works in-game. So when you're in-game, it doesn't support continuous key down events. So moving around is kind of awkward, but you can get it done. In fact, I played the whole game with just my keyboard. You see, the movement here isn't too advanced, so the clunky keyboard support can be usable. The weird thing here is that controller support wasn't working for me, whereas if I jump onto my actual iPad Pro, the controller is working, so I don't know what's happening there. The frame rate here is only targeting 30 FPS. The developer did tell me that because they are avoiding iPads overheating. But in this instance, we're not playing on an iPad, but it's still just replicating the iPad version, so it's still playing at that frame rate. I showcased F1 Mobile in my first M1 video, and at that time I said it didn't have controller support. However, I played a little bit more of it and discovered that after you finish the tutorial, then controller support is working. However, it only works in-game, it doesn't work for menu interaction. Controller support was added to this game quite a few months later from its original release, so maybe they just never tested it in the tutorial section and kind of forgot about it. I don't know. Among Us is probably the most popular game on the App Store. The iPad version was brought to Mac, but it really shouldn't have, because it's not very playable. It doesn't have controller support, it doesn't have keyboard support, and it doesn't have official mouse support. So you're going to be using the on-screen touch controls with the mouse, but thankfully I did get a kill. I did get a kill, and no one discovered that it was me, even though there was just a guy standing right there. I still won. I don't know how that works. Public service announcements: don't download this game on M1. I don't even know why the developers would opt into the program. Why would you bring this to M1? It just doesn't make sense. It's a first-person shooter that doesn't have controller support on iPad, so you would be using the touchscreen controls. You can't move and shoot at the same time. You have to stop and then aim the camera and hope that you can shoot. It does have auto shooting enabled, so that makes it 5% easier. Oh, it's not good. And again, Dragon Raja, it doesn't make sense on M1. It just has on-screen touch controls, which you are using with the mouse. It does have partial controller support. You can move around with the left stick, but it's super broken. I was playing the game at the max graphical preset with 60 FPS enabled, and it does look pretty good graphically, but yeah, I wouldn't suggest playing it here. Crossy Road is one of the most classic mobile games. It works surprisingly well with just your mouse to move around. Mind you, I would suggest playing with a controller, as using a mouse is just a tiny bit awkward and sometimes imprecise. The developer did tell me that the game supports 60 FPS. Oceanhorn is a classic RPG which is inspired by Zelda. I played the game with my controller as it has controller support. Weirdly though, there is a desktop Mac App Store version available which has keyboard support, controller support, and custom graphics. So I don't know why the developer doesn't just make the desktop version a universal app. If you don't know what I mean in regards to universal apps, well, since macOS Catalina, developers have had the ability to make their apps universal across all Apple platforms. Buy on one platform, and then you can play and download them on all of your Apple devices: iPhone, iPad, Apple TV, and Mac. Multicraft, Interloper, Neon Beats, and Asphalt 8 have this support. Incredible Mandy is a very underrated action puzzler. I showed the game last year in my top 10 iPhone games, and said that it's fantastic to play with a controller. And here it obviously supports controllers with the iPad version. You can also play at a high graphics preset with a resolution of 100%, and the game looks pretty good. I highly suggest looking at this game because the puzzles are really good, and it also has some pretty good action scenes too. Here we have one of my favorite puzzle games on the App Store. Weirdly, just like Oceanhorn, The Witness has a desktop Mac App Store version which supports keyboards, controllers. The iPad version does support controllers, but obviously doesn't support keyboards. If the developer is watching this, please make the desktop version a universal app with iPhone and iPad. The developer told me that the iPad version also supports 30 FPS. You would have seen Apple showcase Monument Valley 2 at WWDC. Well, here it is up and running on my M1 MacBook Pro. The game works really well with just your mouse here, as it doesn't have any on-screen touch buttons. You'll just be touching a point to move the characters, or you'll be touching and holding to move certain puzzles around in the environments. Astoy Games also told me that Monument Valley 2 supports 60 FPS, which looks fantastic for all the puzzle-solving goodness. Thumper is an arcade action game where you play as a space beetle going through the galaxy. I was playing with a controller and it works fantastic, as all you have to do is move left and right and time your moves to the music. I wish the game had keyboard support, as it would work wonders for all the movement here. The developer also told me that the game supports 60 FPS if you are interested. Forager is a very popular 2D open-world RPG. I don't suggest you play it if you have things to do because you won't be able to stop. I was playing with a controller, and as you'd expect, it worked really well. Just as per usual, don't play with the touchscreen controls. Not very comfortable. Naruto Slugfest is a pretty good MMORPG. You can move around with the left stick of your controller, but you can't look around. So here's what I did. It was super awkward, but it was amusing. I moved around with the left stick of my controller, and then I used my mouse to press the on-screen buttons for looking around and attacking. It kind of got the job done, I'm not gonna lie, but it was stupid. You can also change the graphics preset up to Ultra, and the game does look pretty good. Stardew Valley has a native Mac version available on Steam, but now you can play the iPad version. He is hoping the developer decide to make this a universal game and port the desktop version to the Mac App Store so that we can play with a keyboard. The iPad version does support controllers, so you have that option if you would prefer. It's a fantastic RPG, and like Forager, it's super addictive. It's so hard to put down. I've shown Hyperlight Drifter so many times on this channel. I love it so much. The developer told me that it supports 60 FPS for the iPad version, so it is running at 60 frames here too. What you're looking at here is one of my favourite iPhone games. It's an adventure game that just works really well on the touchscreen. There is a desktop Mac version available on the Mac App Store. The iOS version of Florence is cheaper, but you won't be playing at a 16:9 aspect ratio. It is working in a portrait orientation. All that said, if you're interested, it is very playable with just your mouse. Controller support was added to this game quite late, so many people don't even know that you can play it with a controller. So here, on Mac, it's playable with a controller. I have no idea how to play this game, but it is a horror game of sorts, and this weird guy chases you, and it's kind of scary, even though the game has, a cartoony aesthetic. Dear Esther. The game isn't going to be for everyone, but it is a very good walking simulator with some story elements hidden in there as well. The iPad version was recently updated with controller support, which is obviously brought here too. Keep in mind though, Dear Esther does have a desktop Mac version, which has keyboard support and improved graphics, but it is much more expensive. And last, but certainly not least, is the Unfinished Swan, which was originally a PS3 game, but was recently ported to PC and mobile in late 2020. It's a fantastic game where you have to splash paint to reveal the world and where to go. I highly suggest it. It's super unique and just a good adventure game. It has controller support too, and you can play with your mouse, but it's super awkward that way. What do you think of iOS games on M1? Have you tried any? Do you think they are poorly optimized for Mac in mind? Do you wish more games were available, like COD Mobile or Genshin Impact? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. In my opinion, the way of finding games right now is not very good on Apple's part. I think they need to make a dedicated page for iPhone and iPad games and display different genres, popular games, new games, paid and free games, and so forth. Furthermore, they need to do a better job at curating what games are brought to M1, as some are not suitable for a desktop experience. Anyway, leave a like to show your support, and subscribe and turn on notifications to stay up to date with everything Apple M1 gaming related. My name's Stewie, and thanks for watching.